Hello YouTube! We are on the Real Programming channel. It is about HTML and CSS. My name is Andrei. This is our 69th lesson. I greet you. We will talk about look at the markup. Let's go! Now let's take a look at the new Starbuzz markup. We're taking each of the logical section and placed it into a div, each with its own ID. Beyond the div and spans, there's really nothing here that you hadn't already seen about chapter 5. So take a quick look and get familiar with the structure, and then turn the page to check out the CSS style. Here is all the usual HTML. Followed by a div for the header and a div for main content area. And then here is the div, class. For the bin mention, we've given it an ID of sidebar. Wonder what that could mean. And finally, we have the div that makes up the footer of the page. And a look at the style. Let's get a good look at the CSS that starts the new Starbuzz page. Step through the CSS rules carefully. While the new Starbuzz page may look a little advanced, you'll see it's all just simple CSS that you already know. First, we just set up some basics in the body, background color and fonts. And we also set the margin of the body to 0. This makes us sure there is no extra room around the edges of the page. Next, we have a rule for each logical section. In each, we are tweaking the font size setting, padding and margins, and also in the case of main and the sidebar specifying a background image. And next we set up the fonts and colors on the headings, and then some colors or the class called slogan, which is called in the sidebar div, and likewise with the banner heading class, which is used there as well. And for the last two rules in the Starbuzz CSS, we use the link and visited pseudo class to style the links. We are removing the default underline that links get up, setting text decoration to none. Instead, we are getting a nice dot underline effect on the links by using a dot bottom border instead of an underline. This is a great example of using the border property on an inline element. We are setting the border bottom only for this element. Let's take a Starbuzz to the style, to the next level. Here is the goal, to turn Starbuzz coffee into the side on the right. To do that, we need to move the bin machine sidebar over the right, so we got a nice 2-column page. Well, you done this once already with the long, right? So based on that, here is what you need to do. First, give the element you are going to float a unique name using an ID. That's already done. 2. Make sure the element's HTML is just below the element you want it to float under, in this case the Starbuzz header. 3. Set weight on the element. 4. Float the element to take left or the right. It looks like you want to float it right. We got a nice 2-column look here with decorate columns. Let's get started. In a few simple steps we should have the Starbuzz CEO sending a few chat tiers over on the house. Move the sidebar just below the header. In the fact of life that when you float an element, you need to move the HTML for the element directly below the element that you wanted to follow. In this case, the sidebar needs to come under the header, so get ahead and locate the sidebar div in your editor and move the entire div to just below the header div. You'll find the HTML in the file index.html. In the chapter 11 Starbuzz folder, after you've done that and saved, reload the page. Now the sidebar should be on top of the main content area. Set the weight of the sidebar and float it. Let's set the weight of the sidebar to 280 pixels and to float the sidebar and the float property to chapter 11 Starbuzz CSS like this. We are using an ID selector to select this element with the ID sidebar, which we know is the div for the sidebar. We are setting the weight of the content area to 280 pixels and then we are floating the sidebar to the right. Remember, this moves the sidebar as far right as possible below the header and it also removes the sidebar from the normal flow. Everything else below the sidebar in the HTML is going to move up and wrap around it. So, I have an idea. In the future, why don't we float the main content to the left rather than the sidebar to the right? Since the main content is already at the top, we wouldn't have to move things around and we get some effect. That's actually a great idea, but there's a couple of issues. On paper it looks like a great idea. What we do is set a weight on the main content div and float it to the left and then let the rest of the page flow around it. That way we get to keep the ordering of the page and we also get 2 columns. The only problem is this doesn't result in a very nice page. Here is why, remember, you have to set a weight on the elements that you are going to float. And if you set weight on the content area, then its width is going to remain fixed while the rest of the page resides along with the weight of the browser. Typically, sidebars are designed to be narrower than the main content area and often look terrible when they expand. So in most designs you want the main content area to expand, not the sidebar. But we are going to look at a way to use this idea that works great, so hang on this idea. We also talk a little more about why you'd even care what order your section are in. Test drive in Starbuzz. Make sure you add the new start by properties to the Starbuzz CSS file in the chapter 11 Starbuzz folder and reload the Starbuzz page. Let's see what we've got. This looks pretty good, but if you flip back 3 pages, you'll see we're not quite where we want to be. The main content and the sidebar are on the left and the right, but they don't really look like 2 columns yet. Look at how the background images of the 2 sections just run together. There is no separation between the columns. And the text wraps around the under the sidebar, which doesn't make this look like 2 columns either. That is actually how the long worked too. Maybe we should have expected that. Fixing the 2-column problem. At this point, you might be realizing that page layout is a bit of an art. We've got a set of techniques for laying out block elements, but none of them is perfect. So what we are going to do is solve our problem using a common technique that is widely used. It's not perfect, as you'll see, but in most cases it gives you good results. And after this you're going to see a few other ways to approach the same 2-column problem, each with its own advantages. What's important here is that you understand the techniques and why they work, so you can apply them to your own problems and when adapt them where necessary. The first thing to remember is that the sidebar is floating on the page. The main content area extends all the way under it. So what if we give the main content area is right margin that is at least as big as the sidebar? Then its content will extend almost to the sidebar, but not all the way. Then we'll have separation between the two, and since margins are transparent and don't show the background image, the background color of the page itself should show thought, and that's what we are looking for. Flip back a few pages and you'll see. Let's make the margin as wide the sidebar. Setting the margin on the main section, and we'll talk about this in the next lesson. This is our 69th lesson over. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel, please. Put like, share with friends, comment, eat bananas, chocolate and nuts, drink more water for the effective work of our brains. Bye.